This podcast is brought to you by the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. Their mission is to honor America's fallen fire heroes, support their families, colleagues, and organizations, and work to reduce preventable firefighter death and injury. Learn more at firehero.org.
Hi, Chris McLoone here with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment. Welcome to this episode of our podcast. We have Ricky Riley with us today. We're going to talk about, there really wasn't a central theme for today's show. We're going to talk about all kinds of things, just things that we saw at FDIC, things at Ricky's department, his opinion on customization. I don't think we got that the last time we spoke. So just not only his opinion on customization, but whether or not he thinks there still be a large place for it, I guess is one way of putting it. We'll narrow that question down a little bit when we get to it. But one of the things that I wanted to talk to Ricky about, I haven't had a chance to yet, really, is FDIC. I know it was a few weeks ago, but for me, it's still very fresh in my mind. And Ricky is able to get out onto the floor in between editorial advice and classes. So wanted to start off with you today, Ricky, just to see, was there anything at FDIC that really struck you this year, that jumped out at you? I saw some Facebook posts of some rigs that you liked, but I guess what was it about some of those rigs that struck your fancy?
I mean, just looking at the other manufacturers. I mean, obviously, everybody knows what apparatus that I purchase and who the manufacturer is, but it's always good to go out and look at the other manufacturers and see, how they're doing things, how their construction is, and then watching the customers, how they have advanced, I guess is probably the best word that I could probably use. Is that, you go to these, I don't know where half these towns are, and I'll Google them, once I get to the rig and go, hey man, this is, a nice looking rig. And you go, this is a really a small town fire department. That's not a lot of small town fire departments are great fire departments. So don't take that the wrong way. And then you go, man, look at the options that they have on this rig, and look at the option they did here. And then, knowing that this manufacturer built it, because I mean, I would certainly say, as we talk about the customization part, when we get to that later on, is that, what are they really willing to build now? Is an important question. But they just, those couple of rigs certainly stuck out for a couple of things. I mean, obviously, we've had Eddie Rice on the show in the past, and with the Washington D.C. Fire Department, they had one of their tiller trucks there. Obviously, tiller trucks are a little near and dear to my heart, along with tower ladders. But once again, you go and watch you look at that rig and just see all the stuff that they do each and every day to make their rigs better. So obviously a great operational department led by, Chief Tony Kelleher, a member of Traditions Training a long time ago. He's a little too busy in his life right now to do any of that, being the operations chief in Washington, D.C., and then watching Eddie Rice's abilities and, just his thought process that goes into those rigs. So beautiful capital cab Seagrave tiller truck, tons of options on there for the safety of the personnel, storage of equipment, all the stuff that they have to carry on that rig to make it work for DC Fire Department. And, going back to even like the rake of the ladders, almost 3 degrees, the tiller cab's small, especially with some of the older firehouses they have to go in. So a lot of good stuff there to see. But a lot of things that, kind of stuck out to me is that we're still talking about electric fire trucks. And Chris, you get to meet a lot more of those people than I do. Because I know that you went down to Rev's 50th anniversary and all that sort of stuff. And I'm just, I don't see the numbers coming in. It's like an event when somebody buys one of those things. And if you look on social media, there'll be 50 posts about it. Not just from the manufacturer, but obviously from people around the country looking at it. And, it's difficult. I mean, obviously, if my boss says, hey, we're going to buy an electric fire truck, guess what Ricky's doing? I'm buying an electric fire truck. That's just the way it is. I mean, everybody has a boss, but to know that those things are almost twice as much money as a regular, you know, motored fire truck, it's baffling to me that how they're going to be able to push that on us. We talk about with Champo was asking me for like next year's tower class. He goes, "Hey, do you think somebody will have a electric tower made by then?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, no!" So obviously, I went and asked a couple engineers that I knew, and they're like, "Oh, we're not even looking at, you know, just the sheer amount of voltage and amps and everything else that it would take to power a boom, and jacks and everything else as opposed to the fire truck. I think it's just I can't even imagine what that battery pack would look like and how far it would extend. But it was still interesting to watch to see that, you went to the Pierce booth and Pierce had broken it down so you could see the components. You could see the electric motor, see the transmission, see the battery pack. Obviously you go to E1's booth, they have they have a same kind of similar thing, kind of showing where all their stuff's at. And, the only thing that I think that they missed is that, I think Pierce did it one year where they had a vendor that did the infrastructure of what it's going to take to plug the fire truck in. And I think that's an important point for anybody that's looking at buying one of those things is you got to look at your electrical infrastructure, and they're quoting $275,000 just to retrofit the firehouse to get the quick charge. So obviously a busy firehouse is going to require quick charge, and with the Madison rig, and I don't know where the E1s are. Obviously Rosenbauer has got the ones in LA City, and now I think Vancouver. I think that's the other one that I think we saw on Fire Apparatus social media. It's just I do not know as much about Rosenbauer's as I know about the other two manufacturers, but it'd be interesting to see what it takes to charge them, how long they last, and all that. So, but I mean, it's really about parts and pieces. I think this year it was just looking at what the parts and pieces underneath the cab, underneath the body are coming out with. I mean, obviously we saw a rig there that is now all high vis warning lights, and then how that integrates with manufacturers, like the command zone on a Pierce, or whether and I forget the name of the E1 one. So I apologize, emergency one, that I don't know. But I mean, they have an integrated screen inside their cab where, that stuff's all controlled from, kind of like a command zone. And I'm sure Rosenbauer obviously has the same thing, especially if you look in like the LA City rig or the Vancouver, having that stuff. So all that kind of stuff's interesting. Obviously we saw a lot of tillers out there this year, a few less towers. I was certainly surprised at the amount of sub-fins that were there. I certainly think they're making a strong push in the market with their rigs, and you keep seeing them getting built more and more. Obviously, I just a couple months ago, not a month, about a month ago, I got to mess with an old 1980s one. But I don't know how much has changed in the sub-fin world. But they're building beautiful rigs. I mean, Miami-Dade's got a couple of those, rigs out there. So it's all kind of good. I mean, you were out there and you were talking to vendors and everything. So what did you see that interested you? I mean,
Well, I'll tell you what. I was in the parking lot when that Seagrave tiller arrived, and I was talking to the guy who was driving it there for a little while, and one of the things that I noticed about that was that it was almost I don't know how to it's a compact tiller. I think like it was one that it didn't there are tillers out there, especially when you start getting into putting pumps and stuff like that on them that get pretty long. This was a and but I think it goes to what you said about building it for DC and building it for DC's firehouses first of all, and then building it for their locals as well. But it was such a compact rig. But one of the things that would have been great to get a video on, for those who weren't there, we did have a picture of this on Fire Apparatus's Facebook page, and also we ran it in a gallery. It wasn't a 90-degree angle, but the booth that they were in was a square booth, and watching them position that that rig so that it was completely on the carpet. Nothing was hanging out into the aisles or anything like that. Really was not only a testament to the guys who were operating it, but also to the versatility that a tiller brings to the equation when you're talking about navigating some of these narrow streets, positioning it in such a way. It was really fun to watch. But I did see that as well. When we talk about a lot of the electric stuff, I've been equating it recently to a car commercial that I saw, and I may have already said that on a commentary podcast. Um, but it was a car commercial where basically they were saying, "Do you want an engine? We got an engine. Do you want a hybrid? We got hybrids. Do you want an electric one? We got an electric one." And it was basically we're building what you're asking for. If you want it, we've got it. And I think in a big way, that's what the manufacturers are doing. This is my personal opinion, and I mean, I don't know, I'm not any kind of prognosticator, but I seriously doubt that at this stage, I would say in the next 5 and even in the next 10 years, we're not going to see like massive purchases of these. We're not going to see departments replacing, their entire fleet, even if it's staggering it in with electric rigs. I mean, when we talk about infrastructure and all that stuff that you just brought up, I mean, you wouldn't be able to see a mid-Atlantic older, 200 or 300 year old city being able to do that. The firehouses are just too old. But I think that the manufacturers who are building them right now are filling a need. They have identified, their customers have identified that there is a need for this. We are seeing, you mentioned, if your boss says, we're buying an electric fire truck, guess what Ricky Riley's doing? And in some cases, that is what's happening. There are municipalities that are trying to reduce carbon footprints, and so they're looking to the fire departments to help them out as well with that. So I agree, but having just said all that, just this week, there was a news release recently this week about another department. I think it was another one in Minnesota. I'm not positive, but they just placed an order for an electric fire truck. So there are definitely departments that are giving them a try, that are in some ways adapting them to their locals, much like we saw with that Seagrave aerial or tiller. So it's interesting, but I agree. I mean, I don't think we're going to see a wholesale change just because the infrastructure costs are there as well. So I think we're going to see departments, even if it's in some of these older ones on the East Coast, we're going to see them pick strategic locations where they're going to station these vehicles, probably depending on the type of call loads that they have, fire load, and et cetera. But you were right. You put one of them on social media, and there are always going to be 50 posts, and it's almost a very binary thing. It's either they're for it or against it. But I haven't heard about any major problems with any of these rigs. I do know there was one that got out on social media, but I shouldn't put it like that. There was a situation with one of the vehicles that made it out on the social media, and of course the doubters, all came in full force. But the way I looked at it was that it was a rig, it was a new rig that had an issue. It went back to the manufacturer, it got fixed, and it went back in service, which is not an uncommon thing for a new rig. We all have punch lists, and sometimes it goes back to the dealer. Sometimes, in some cases, it has to go back to the factory. But it always gets fixed, and it always goes back in service. And we haven't heard anything about that particular rig since it went back, got fixed, and went back in service. So, one thing well, actually, I wanted to roll this into the next question I have for you about your recent order. One thing I did notice, and I did hear, it wasn't like a full force. Now, it'd be interesting, and this actually rolls into another one of the questions I had as well. It wasn't a full bore marketing campaign to try to promote this, but there is definitely a market being created right now in a stronger way than I've certainly seen since I've been covering the market, since I've been, on purchasing committees at my own fire company. Um, I don't want to call them program. I don't want to call them stock. You and Bill Adams just recently answered a question about, we were talking specifically about pumpers. But there is, I think we're going to see a few more manufacturers really start to take a look at, what people are looking for on a common basis, and start to put them into some of the rigs that are available out there. Not only do you get them faster usually, but there is usually a reduced cost. But before we get into all that, because that gets into the customization conversation we were going to have, wanted to just check in. One of the podcasts we had earlier this year was about the order that the most recent order that Prince George's County put in for it was I think it was a couple of tillers and some pumpers too. How's that order going? Have you been out to the manufacturer yet to see progress?
That order's still lingering in space. And it's the order's been placed. We do a prepayment. So we prepay, we get a bid bond and performance bond and all that. So because once again, we're, 3 years from order to delivery. So I would say that with a couple manufacturers that, that I've checked in on, is that usually, we're, you don't even go to engineering. Well, depending on the manufacturer, because, with certain, manufacturers like E1, you go real early. And then, you wait 2 to 3 years for the truck to get built. Another manufacturer is, hey, we wait for a year or two, then you do engineering, and then we're going to build your truck. There was a couple things that I talked about in my class at FDIC about that, and to kind of clean that up. But, so since we've ordered those pumpers and the tiller and ambulances, and, just last month we ordered some more pumpers, another HDR, and 10 ambulances. So another big order, and we ordered a fireboat. So that this will be the first fireboat that I've ever built. So very, very anxious to get that started. That's only a year build. So that's like 6 months. To in the fire truck world for us, it's like I can't believe we're going to get it in a year. During the height of COVID, they were talking about even getting the outboard motors for the fireboat was going to take 2 years. So they would have the boat sitting there waiting on motors, but apparently that's all been cut down. The delivery times have decreased dramatically for that. So, but we're kind of in nowhere but land right now, just waiting for the time to go by to where we can get to engineering. We just went to engineering right after FDIC for the 4 pumpers that are going to get delivered in December. One's going to be ready in November, and the rest are going to be in December, and that's a 2021 order or 2022 order. So that's a long time, man. It's and you wish you could, we go out to FDIC, and you and I talk to all these people and talk to all these vendors, and it's I don't even think they know what to say anymore, and not in a bad way, just that we can't help you. It is what it is, and there's no vendor out there. Even though there's some proclaiming that stop the wait, we'll get you in a fire truck, but as soon as, if the fire truck is good that they're building, and it's built well and it becomes popular, then that manufacturer is going to get inundated with orders and deal with what the big manufacturers are dealing with now, is the inundation of orders to try to prevent, municipalities are having to pay these crazy price increases to help with manufacturing, to help with the workforce. I really think the workforce is what's really, driving a lot of this, is that, just having the skilled people to do that kind of work. Look, I can fix some things. I can, do a couple things here, but, wiring a whole fire truck, multiplexing a whole fire truck, bending the metal, designing how it's going to fit in there, where the piping is going to go. And that's an art form. I mean, there's a reason why these big manufacturers, these OEMs, that we have out in the field, they've been doing it for, what was it, 50 years for E1,
Yep.
Seagrave from, whenever fire trucks started, and Pierce and all those people. I mean, they're, it takes a lot to build these rigs. I don't think people appreciate, customers. I mean, I have some very nervous customers that I'm dealing with in consulting, that this is insanity. We just can't do this. And I'm like, this is the way of the world, man. There's no, I told the chief from Charlotte, North Carolina, I mean, he made a big order, and I said, look, and he's like, I'm getting ready to order X $1 million. And I'm like, well, if you get quicker delivery than me, I can guarantee you I'm calling the president of someplace, to have a discussion, about it. But, I don't think any manufacturer is willing to make that, to go, hey, we're going to put all these customers on hold because this customer wants to buy $10 million or $12 million worth of fire trucks. Because that's just.
But from their perspective, like the manufacturers do know that it's happening, and they are digging in as much as they possibly can into that backlog that they have. It's just, it's resources, like you just said, with the labor. But I mean, it just takes time. I mean, that's the one thing we can't manufacture.
That should be stitched on a pillow. Time is something you can't manufacture, because it's interesting to see, to watch the process to kind of go through them. And I don't understand why, trying to get that slot. And, regardless of manufacturer, I think, when you sign that contract, like we've said on a podcast before, and I've told everybody, consulting, in my own department, anywhere out, look, if order it today, get it on order, get your slot in the production line. And now I think one of the most important things that you do now is to ensure that you don't have any change orders, or have a problem making a decision. I mean, there's some apparatus committees that are 9, 10, 11 people, and I would be shocked if 11 of them even talk to each other at the firehouse, and then you get them in this room, or you try to get them on a telephone to make a phone call. And now, the decision that has to be made, the manufacturer calls the salesperson, says, hey, we got a question on your rig. This is what's got to get done. Then it takes them 2 to 3 weeks, to get this answer back. Man, that is just extending your time out, more or less. Getting, so what we're trying to do now with our rigs, you talked about our order, is that every question that we want answered, so we're going to place the order. This is our spec, and regardless of how clean our spec is or how well versed we are in our spec, manufacturing changes, so a line change, or, what I mean by a line change is, that they may have been doing this option for 10 years. And, however, this engine fits, or this DEF tank fits, or this exhaust system or the DEF filters fit, however they fit on the fire truck now, it doesn't, this option we have doesn't fit in the same place, or needs to be turned 180, whatever the problem is, and they got to get back to us about that. And anytime that you slow that process down, you're going to hurt your delivery. So, now we're taking our time that we have, the 1 or 2 years that we have before we go to engineering, is that now let's get every question ironed out now. And I'm getting ready to suggest that to one of my customers, is that, look, we ordered the truck, in the summertime, and we hurriedly did it because we wanted to beat a price increase. So now let's go through that thing with a fine-tooth comb, go over every option, every placement, get that to the salesperson, get the salesperson to get it into the order. And then when we go to engineering, this should be a one-day thing, regardless of the complexity of the rig. Because now if we make a change at engineering, and now that's just that could delay production, or you could lose, your slot, depending on what decision you're making. Well, hey, I want a 400 motor rather than a 500 motor, or I want a 75 foot area rather than a 100 foot area, whatever that decision is. And obviously a lot of those times you make those if you make those big decisions that, you're going to make a motor change or a transmission change or a ladder change or something like that, that will restart the order from, that'll put you all the way back to, all right, we're refiling the order and today's the day that we're going to start. And now you're going to go back out another 4 years, to get a delivery. So getting that stuff, cleaned up is critical to organizations. And that's what we did last week was that, obviously these pumpers were ordered over a year ago, probably 2 years ago. And now we're going to, we wanted to make sure everything was cleaned up. We walked in, we had a 5-hour engineering conference for a pumper, because we had already knew with the questions. And once again, the importance of a salesperson comes into play. And I know I talk about this a lot in class, and I know we've talked about it on here, is that how important that salesperson is to you as a customer is to make sure that all the problems of the world that we're having with manufacturing and at the vendor, at the OEMs, they can help cure some of that. Having these questions ready to go, getting answers, pestering us for answers. I mean, look, not every day is about Pierce calling my salesperson and then the salesperson calling me. I mean, I got 15 other things, 100 other things I got to do that day, and I can't get back to them in that hourly time. But they're waiting on that decision, to go on, to move on to the next thing. And once again, I can't reiterate enough, man. You can't dilly dally around anymore. Have a good solid team, apparatus committee. Look, and I always want some people with differing opinions, but you're not going to win, unless you're Eddie Rice, you're not going to win every battle. I mean, Eddie always wins every battle. I like to have a little give and take with some of my decisions because once again, we're going to involve the mechanics. We're going to involve the people that are in operations, that are in the field every day. And then, how, the standardization of the department and how we're going to fit things on there. So everybody kind of gets a vote in there, but at the end of the day, we have to make a decision what's good for the organization and what's good for the fire truck to get it delivered. So sorry, I kind of went on a rant there, but I don't think people understand just how important those timeframes are. How quickly we have to get that information back to the salesperson.
I think it's like I really do believe in, and maybe as a fire service, we've gotten away from it a little bit, but and maybe we were able to get away with it. Now that things are so tight and the lead times are such, it's really kind of come back to haunt us. But I really, the more you do in the beginning, the more work you do in the beginning on almost anything, it makes the rest of the process flow so well because, like you were saying, all the questions are already answered. And then, and if you build right now we've got some time between order and construction. So, you can really narrow some things down. And I'm just repeating what you said, but I really agree with you 100%. Like the more you do in the beginning, wholesale changes, toward the end, when it's on the when it's on the final inspection floor are not the way you want to go, or in the middle of the build. So really, I'm agreeing with you 100%. The more you do in the beginning, it's just not only is it not going to prolong the process, everything will just be smoother. There won't be questions, and so I'm agreeing with you on that. But I did want to also talk about the other side of this. You mentioned that this order is at least a 2-year-old order. So you've been keeping rigs on the road probably longer than you normally would, and that gets into the maintenance end of things. And so I was wondering, so as I've been covering this throughout the pandemic, one of the things that's become clear is that manufacturers have discovered. Now, of course, this is on the manufacturing end, but they've discovered different streams to get the parts, that they need to build the trucks. And of course, 9 times out of 10, you're probably, to keep your stock up, you're probably going to go to the same parts suppliers. But one of the problems, one of the tough deals right now is parts, getting the parts to keep those rigs on the road. So on the maintenance side, has the parts situation improved for your department? If not, are there unique things that your department's trying to do to I guess lessen the time it's going to take to get the rig back on the road if it's a parts issue?
Yeah, I mean, I believe parts are still an issue. So I mean, we spent almost 5 hours today cleaning Connex boxes, and I'm even out there and cleaning the extra storage facilities we have on our property to make room for more parts that we're buying. Because we tasked our parts person with, hey, look, we have a def canister on a Cummins motor or a Detroit motor, or we don't have any Packards yet, and we don't have any on the shelf, because obviously getting those is a hard task. I mean, getting any parts of the DEF system, the diesel exhaust stuff or the EPA stuff is difficult to get a hold of, and get in your hands. And then of course it's got to be fit for the right motor, and it's got to be fit for the right, how it's situated on the fire truck, and how all that stuff kind of go together. So I mean, my parts person is like, okay, you need me to order a def canister for this Dodge ambulance, and then he orders 3 of them, and then it's to have them on the shelf. With us as a government entity, obviously having stock doesn't hurt us. Having stock in a private company such as our dealerships and our manufacturers, that's taxes for them. They don't get free, you don't get free taxes, with that stuff. So they get taxed for that. So they're not keeping as much. I mean, I think certainly the mega dealers that are out there, I think Bill was one of the ones. Bill was talking about that. These mega dealers, is that even they, it costs a lot of money to have that stuff in stock. So we try to make sure that we have plenty in stock. But I mean, we went looking for. So we had a Suburban, a Tahoe, or something like that, and you have to have hands free. It's a state law. So the microphone goes bad. It'd be 2 months. I'm like, 2 months for a microphone? It's a Deutsch connector and this little microphone. I'm like, it's going to take 2 months to get in, and I'm just, all right, well, go grab one off another vehicle. So it isn't just, I think, the fire service, the fire manufacturers. It's the deal, the car dealers, the car dealers, the Chevrolets, the Dodges, the Fords, all those manufacturers. I think they're still struggling also with it. I mean, we have a fleet of Dodge ambulances, and trying to get parts for those is still a problem. So, I mean, our biggest thing is that we just keep buying and buying parts and having them on the shelf. I mean, we said it on a podcast a couple months ago, is that the best thing that, when I come walking out on the floor and the mechanics aren't doing anything, the best thing they love to say is, hey, we're waiting on parts. I don't know, I'm TikToking because, I'm waiting on parts. I'm like, and I go to the parts guy, this can't happen. We can't have the mechanics not have parts. So figure that part out. And then that's when he comes to me a week ago and says, I've run out of room. We need to clean up some stuff. And, we're stocking radiators, we're stocking def canisters, we're stocking windshields, all these big component pieces, we're springs, airbags, tires, rims, we just never know. And I think, like when we talked to Mark from New York, before he retired, he's feeling the same thing. And your buying power has no effect on things. So, my buying power, I think I have a lot of buying power, but compared to Mark in New York, I don't have a lot of buying power, because Mark is Mark. We, like we talked about the people from LA, city and LA County and those shops, but you can't throw, I am this department and expect stuff to show up. It doesn't matter. And then to watch some of the processes that have to go through now, through a lot of stuff with the DEF, to get it even warranted, is a difficult process. It's challenging, depending on your OEM, how they want you to go through the process. You have to test this before you do that. You just can't throw parts at it. And, where we, as the final user, will throw parts at it, because to us, it's about getting the rig back in service. for them being the dealers or the fix it shops or the repair shops, is that, hey, I'm not going to lose money to get your truck back in service.
Gotcha.
If I don't follow this process set forth to me by the OEM, they're not going to reimburse me for the warranty part or the warranty work.
Mhm.
But for us, it's like, hey, like Mark, LA City, I'm sure Eddie Rice and Dallas and all those places that are these big departments. All it cares about us is getting the truck back in service. So we'll throw a part at it. But
Mhm.
you have to have it on the shelf to do that. So.
What about your ambulances? How's the ambulance side of your fleet doing? That's an aspect of purchasing that doesn't get talked about an awful lot. It's surprising because the rate that departments like a busy department like yours or Philly or New York or Chicago, all those, they're burning through ambulances like crazy, and it's been really tough getting those. Has that changed for you? I mean, like, and when we think about you know um, the chances of having an accident because of where your ambulances respond, the Beltway and all that, and some of these other departments, like it's not easy. Has the ambulance side of your fleet, or are you still experiencing trouble there? Or you mentioned you just ordered a bunch of new ambulances, but are you still having trouble getting them in? And how about parts for the ambulances?
So I mean, ambulances I think are a challenge for everybody. I mean, the ambulances are much more designed for disposal,
Mm,
use and then disposal rather than use and reuse. So I mean, I don't think the reboxing or the rechassing or any of that stuff is really a big thing anymore. It's for us, for I would say, those cities and towns that you mentioned, for us, it's get it, wear it out, sell it, get rid of it. It's, but we're we have 2006 ambulances, and 300,000 miles on them. I mean, it's just of course, EMS, across the country is getting, they're getting worn out. Like I'm sure Philly, like you said, and Chicago, New York, they all have busy EMS systems, just like ours. Even in all the departments, the Baltimore, Washington metropolitan area, is that we're just putting more and more miles on them. With hospital wait times, due to being in these metro areas, is that now they're spending more time at the hospital and the unit's idling. So when the unit idles, that is not good for the DEF system at all. DEF systems like high heat, to burn off that, to burn all that stuff off. So now the DEF, the DEF filters get clogged, the DEF systems go bad, just from that idling. So it's a big system, but for us, I think we're starting to see a little bit of a turn. A bunch of our stuff that we ordered 2021, 2022 is actually starting to come in. We're trying to keep up with those orders. That's why we just did this big order of 10. Once again, it pales into comparison with some of the other, jurisdictions that, we talked to on the podcast in the past. But, I would like to order 20. We have over 100 ambulances in the fleet. We buy 20, it takes 2 years. We're still wearing out these down here, to the point where we're trying to find parts for them. We're keeping the ones that are wrecked to scavenge parts off of. We're down there scavenging, turbo actuators. We're down there, scavenging air conditioning parts off of them, to try to, keep units in service. And, I think every municipality that, deals with a fleet is experiencing this. I don't think we're a unique organization by that means, but I think we went down and did our inspections right after FDIC on a bunch of ambulances. We were very pleased with our vendor, very pleased with the way their quality control has gotten a lot better. And but of course I look over and like we talk about, and Mark's old department, they got a dedicated line. It's just FDNY ambulances. I'm like, how many ambulances do you have to buy to get your own line? Apparently, I don't know what that number is, but it must be pretty sweet because all, that's all you do all day is make FDNY ambulances. But it's the problem we have is with the chassis manufacturers more than the box manufacturers, is getting the parts and pieces for those, because none of these dealers of, the chassis manufacturers are interested in the fire departments or the EMS services. They're interested in the daily customer. And then their service departments mainly are based on the civilian vehicle rather than a big ambulance. So even finding a vendor that has a lift that'll put the ambulance on there is a challenge. And then, we literally had an ambulance at a vendor whose chassis will remain nameless for almost a year and 3/4. Because it's a warranty engine problem. It sat at a vendor for 200 some odd days. We moved it from one dealer to another dealer to try to get it better, get it fixed better. So it's ambulances are, they're going to be, we're a 2-year wait on ambulances now. So as opposed to whatever the year is, and obviously some of these chassis manufacturers are not even taking orders. So that's a challenge also. So we're dealing with it. I think we're going to be hurting for a long time until we can get a big bulk order in. We're 15 will be delivered before the end of the summer. But we'll already have we'll be in the heat of summer, which means every air conditioner will break. We'll go through enough freon, that the EPA will probably be after us. But it's just that it's that time of the year. It's where all the things are going to break when it gets hot outside.
Wanted to ask you about customization. We talked about it in the beginning of the show, and I hinted that we would get back to it, and I would like to. And it's just when there are manufacturers that are specifically building kind of program type. I don't program is probably isn't the right term.
No, I think it's a perfect word. I think it's a perfect word.
So do you think that we are at a point where the program or the stock rigs are going to become more the norm than custom rigs? Or do you think just because of like the sheer size of a New York or an LA that, those are customized rigs. They're according to a spec, which is going to be customized for the department. But some of the other customization that goes on can get a little crazy sometimes. And just an opinion, because you can get a program rig sooner, often for less, for reduced cost. Do you think we're at a point where things are going to kind of tilt that way, or do you think because there really is a market being developed for it right now, I think, and I wasn't sure where obviously you can come at it from from your department where you're at, but I don't know, just a curiosity question. Where do you think? Do you think it's going to tilt? Are we at a tipping point, or do you think it's going to be a long time before something like that happens?
I want every fire department in the country to buy a program truck, so I can get a faster line for my custom rig. So I'm advocating for everybody from New York to LA to get a program truck. And when we talk about a program truck, in case you don't know what Chris and I are talking about, it's very simply it's a fire truck. Once again, it's a fire truck. Has its chassis, whatever cab you're going to get with it, depending on who you buy it from. But it kind of has a standardized set of options. You can't do a lot of special custom manufacturing to it. So it goes down the manufacturing line in a much quicker process. So there's not, in my manufacturer, they call it special pricing. I'm sure for every OEM manufacturer, they have their own special word for it. But, it's like, for instance, like we cut down 5 inches on the side of our rig to get the packs lower. Well, that's engineering. That's special cut of metal. So, how many of those trucks in a month are going to go through my OEM? And now they have the CNC machine cutting the aluminum or cutting the stainless steel, to make the rigs. And they go, oh, we have to have a special cut in here because, these guys from my department want a special 5-inch lower thing. Whereas, now I can take a sheet of aluminum, stick it in a CNC machine and go, all right, we're going to cut all these parts out. And, if you've ever seen a CNC machine work, obviously there's barely any metal left when they get done. I mean, they figure, that computer the programmer figures out how to get that thing done correctly. And, now they have enough pieces to build 5 fire trucks, and it's all, it's this compartment door, it's this extrusion, it's this piece of diamond plate, and it's measuring this long and this wide, as opposed to, oh, we got this special truck from Maryland that needs to have theirs this wide and this long. It's I there's a couple, not my customers, but close friends of mine that are, Ocean City, Maryland, Berlin, Maryland. All those are very high custom fire truck purchasers. For the entire time I've known them, and they just went to program trucks. One, like you said, they want to get it quicker. We can get it in 2.5 years or 3 years, or whatever it is. And then obviously, what are they sacrificing? If you go look at your own department, look within your department, do your fire trucks even match? Even in your department, you look on the floor to the apparatus, and they probably don't match anyway. So what's the real hurt of, hey, let's get a program truck. We can get it for cheaper. We can get it with less options, and we can, as long as it fits our operational needs. Why not go that route? Whereas with the FDNY, with LA, with us, with DC, a lot of that is that, hey, we got 40, 50, 60, 70 of these rigs in the fleet, and we got to have them all look the same. So when the firefighters operate off them, it's a lot easier to train, like in your department, Chris, it's a lot easier to train that number of firefighters that's in your organization to that new rig, as opposed to trying to train hundreds of firefighters on how this rig works, as opposed to the rig that you drove yesterday. I think, Mark certainly has, said a lot about that, in his podcast a couple months ago before he retired, is that, how FDNY, this is where the discharge goes, and it's on discharge has been here for the last 35 years. So, and the drains are here for the last 35 years. And, Eddie Rice from DC does pretty much the same thing. They very rarely change, they're very old school. So when you talk about that ladder truck, how they got it in there and how short it is, how compact it is, and how, like low to the ground it is, that's all by design. I mean, that is designed by that company that built it, being Seagrave. It's designed by, Chief Eddie Rice and the department, and how they've operated. So, hey, think outside. I would love to buy a program truck. But what am I what I'm sacrificing, what the FDNY is sacrificing, what LA's sacrificing, what Dallas is sacrificing, is standardization, a training element, and not having the rigs all across the floor. So once again, making sure that everybody in the country buys ones to lower the backlog, so we can get more fire trucks out there. Especially for me, I am selfish that way. I admit it, but it's a program, and I think more fire departments are looking at it, and for good reason. So.
I think you're right. I think they are looking at it, whether or not it'll become like this major tipping point kind of a thing. I don't know that it will, only because, so you have like a DC where, it's a very, I want to say specific specification, and that just doesn't sound right. It's a very targeted specification for those rigs, and there are a lot of them. And so, you're always going to see customization there. But, while the volume may be lower for a lot of like rural departments or some of the suburban volunteer departments, the volume of those trucks may be lower, but they're still being built for specific geographic areas. So I don't think you'll ever lose that customization, but there could be, but you never know. I mean, if some of these manufacturers that are building, the program or the stock vehicle, however you want to describe it, if they start giving models where it's like, X, overall length, X overall length, X overall length, and they really get into that, and certain departments, they're like, well, I had been building something that big for my local anyway in the past, why don't we give it a go? I think it's going to depend on how many fire departments decide, to give it a go, to say like, we'll give this a shot. I do know a lot of them are looking at it. There's probably some out there that are in more dire need of a new rig than others. So, this may be something that they really that they really look to. I mean, when you think about fire trucks today, I'm bringing up customization, but when you think about fire trucks today, they really are, components, and that's not mine. I stole that from Mike Wilbur. They really are components. They're assembled. The days of Mac, where it's a Mac engine, a Mac transmission, a Mac pump, like the whole thing. Those days we're not in them anymore. So there is, a lot of, components being purchased to build the truck.
I mean,
So, and that's where the program rigs come into play. Like it's components. It's the chassis, the pump, the seats. It's and what can you do to increase that throughput?
The customers got it. I mean, the customers, including myself, have to realize that we're not always right anymore. The customer is the king. That's a great statement. The customer's always right. That's a really great statement, but it's not the case anymore. And it's not a hit on the fire apparatus manufacturers. But I mean, recently I was watching a tower getting built, and you get a young kid or a middle-aged kid, whatever, they're all kids to me anymore. Is that he wants to move the controls in the basket. Take the controls that's in a basket of a fire truck that's been designed, and this is the manufacturer's design, and go, well, we want to do it like this manufacturer does it. I'm like, do you understand, one, how far that's going to push your fire truck out? And then, the manufacturer is going to throw you a number that they don't want to build it. It's like, so yeah, we'll put a joystick for your tower controls in place of your 3 levers for $45,000. This is the number we want to throw at you, so you don't do it. There'll be somebody crazy enough to do it, but but they just, I don't think they're inclined to do it. I mean, I think they all kind of stay in their lane now, and I don't. Once again, I know that may sound bad. Is that hey, if you want our fire truck, E1, Seagrave, Pierce, Rosenbauer, this is how we build our fire truck. This is how we build our aerial. This is how our aerial controls are. This is how our aerial's built. This is how our jacks are. This is, hey, we'll put some lights on it for you. We'll throw a screen in there. We'll get a motor for you and all that sort of stuff. And like you said, and like Mike Wilbur said, is that all those pieces got to come from somewhere. All these manufacturers are doing is, putting the metal around it, running all the electrical wiring, but all that's once again tied to parts and pieces that they're buying. And that's not a bad thing by a far stretch. I mean, I wouldn't want to have all my eggs in one basket, like back in the days that, it's a Mac truck and I got to buy a Mac, lift rod or a cylinder because I got to get it specifically for Mac. At least now, I can get it from a it's a Detroit. Not only can I get it from the Detroit, manufacturer, but now I have all these dealers that are out there could have all these parts. So it's it's interesting to say the least. So, and I know I've said that a bunch of times today, and I know people are probably tired of hearing about it, and I'm sorry, but it's really interesting to go to work every day and hear what the problem is going to be of the day when, hey, the, truck so-and-so is out of service. And, then the operations people are calling going, hey, we're really hurting for trucks today. How come we can't get this back in service? And, we're waiting for part widget, and part widget is not available. And, then the parts people make liars out of us, when they say it's going to take 2 months and it shows up in 2 days, and then, now the operations people don't trust us. So.
Well, in addition to being a fleet manager, a past chief, a volunteer, a career firefighter, anyone who's looking at you right now knows you're a bit of a collector as well. And I know that the Allentown event, Allentown, Pennsylvania, or Lehigh Valley, whatever they're calling it, took place right after FDIC. Did you get up this year to see it? And if not, are you planning on going to any other ones? I think it was on a Facebook post, or maybe it was Instagram, a recent, I think it was a Seagrave emblem that you got.
Oh, yeah.
Anything upcoming to add to that collection behind you?
Yeah. So, man, yeah, I did get up to Allentown. I did not get to the auction, which is usually the Saturday, where they auction off a lot of things. I went up on Sunday, and there was a lot of stuff there. If you go, a lot of these people that do this memorabilia stuff are old. So, Facebook is the way. They're not on TikTok. They're not on Instagram. They're not on any of those social media streams. And, I prior to Allentown, I found a beautiful 18-inch gong that's, kind of like that one above my head here, and met the guy there, and bought that. And I bought a couple little, trinket things, and bought, the Seagrave emblem that you're talking about was made by Lee Schaefer from High Vis. He owns an old 87 Pierce Arrow. I think it's 87. And we've been helping him try to get that thing back up and running. He's got it running. We were able to get him the original prints from Pierce out of the archives and stuff like that. So that was, he had asked me what were my favorite emblems in manufacturers, because obviously he's in the manufacturing world, so it was like Rotorray, Pierce, and Seagrave were my top 3 old school emblems that I liked. And so he made that out of wood. That's custom made out of wood. Wow. I'm sure it's some high tech laser printer thing that, I know I'm speaking out of my world here to make it, because it's very intricate. But once again, there's, if you go on the Society of the Preservation of Fire Apparatus, that is a good Facebook page, a good website to go to if you're interested in starting to collect. And look, this was an older thing in my life. I certainly only cared about a couple things. Now I've gone way overboard, but getting to see some of the history that's out there, and these people that sell these things are just as interesting as the items they're selling. How long they've been doing it, their history, their stories and stuff like that. Dan McCullough from Boston, sells everything Boston that there possibly be, but he's a collector. So there's very few of us younger people that are these collectors, and that's a far stretch saying I'm younger. But it's very interesting to go up there. They're all around the country. I would beg you to get on Facebook and those social media outlets and try to find them. There's one in New Jersey here. There's Michigan. I don't see much more than like that Michigan, the Northeast, and around our area that have those. But so big 18-inch gong, Seagrave emblem. I bought a couple other little things, that I can't mention from my secrets guy, because he doesn't let me say his name or anything like that. But I will tell you that, I don't know if you can let me get my picture here right there. I got a 1926 High Eagle leather helmet from the Baltimore City Fire Department. The shield on it is Repair Shop 1.
Oh, nice.
In 1926, they formed an engine company at the repair shop, and they had an engine company running out of there that was mechanics, to have extra staffing. And this is a helmet from 1926. And, so even though I collect a lot of stuff from the fire department, now I'm starting to collect a lot of stuff related to, the apparatus stuff and the repair shops and stuff like that. And another interest is I've gotten older, so it's been great. So I'm happy as can be. So I can't tell you who I got it from, but he's a great dude. So
that's one event I want to get up to. And then I'm also the muster in Harrisburg also is something I want to get out to one of these years. So this stuff behind me, hopefully I'll be filling it up with other type of stuff versus just my old stuff. Although that Emergency 51 helmet, I do really, that's one of my pride and joys. That was an eBay purchase, but
when you wear that doing a podcast one day, then that'll be the day. So. But yeah, I mean the Allentown, not the Allentown, the Harrisburg show is coming. I mean the Harrisburg Expo is coming up. I would say that the Friday night of the Harrisburg Expo, there's a there's a fundraiser at a Pennsylvania firehouse, the Allison, where they raise money to restore the firehouse and keep the apparatus in service. I think on that Saturday, so I think that's the 17th of May. So if you're in the eastern part of the country here, let me just see if I can get my dates right here for, yeah, the 17th. But on the 18th, the Pennsylvania State Fire Museum is having a sale also. They're cleaning out their closet. That's the Riley, Reilly, company in Harrisburg. That's another beautiful museum of old, Harrisburg stuff, old fire apparatus, old helmets and everything. But they're going to have a sale there also. I don't think I'm going to get to that one, but I'll be at the one at the Allison. They're near and dear to my heart. Who doesn't want to own an early 1900s firehouse with a bell tower, spiral staircase, and a Mack tiller truck in there, an open cab Mack tiller truck. So shout out to my boys at the Allison. We'll be there on Friday night hoisting some drinks. I won't be drinking, obviously, but I'll be buying some stuff. So.
All right, cool deal. Well, Ricky, thank you very much for joining me again. One of our frequent repeat guests on this. So thanks for coming on, talk about FDIC. It's always good to hear what there's so much that goes on there, and it really is. It's different for everybody what people pick up. So thanks a lot for talking to me about that, and just kind of giving me an idea of like, of course you're talking about your particular department, but I mean it's the same for many out there. So it really does give us an idea kind of where we're at, in the fire service right now in terms of the purchasing and all that kind of stuff. And of course, I love the history. Like I said, hopefully one of these days I'm going to have a few more historical trinkets back here that I can put up on display. But thanks for talking about Allentown. Now you gave me something else to do on that on for the Harrisburg show this year.
Sure.
So,
and I mean, I would certainly say that these manufacturers. I mean, when we talk about it, is that the thing that I think is most honorable about them is they're not blind. So I can throw out $10 million and go $10 million. I want to buy my fire trucks, and they're not going to take away. They're not going to hurt the single engine customer. And that goes for I would say the majority of the manufacturers. I mean, I deal with, all of those, and none of them have done, hey, we're going to push, this single firehouse, single engine order down the road because these guys want to buy $10 million worth of fire trucks. So, I mean, I think the manufacturers deserve a lot of credit for the, that's very respectable. It's very honorable that they're not going to go, hey, let's get the money and go build these guys fire trucks. We're going to make some profit, and then we'll bump these guys back. So I think that says a lot about those manufacturers. So
that's a great point and an important one. I think sometimes it's not necessarily lost, but it gets a little forgotten that the manufacturers who are stuck telling us it's going to be this long to get your rig, they're not enjoying that by any stretch of the imagination, and they are working very hard behind the scenes to try to rectify the situation. And the same thing goes for what you just said about they're not knocking anybody out to go for the big bucks. So I think that's also a very important point to make. But we have reached the end of our podcast today. If there are topics that you would like me to cover with Ricky or just cover in general, as I've said before, we can certainly find the subject matter experts for it. Let me know. I'm at chris.mccloone@clarionevents.com. As well, if you want to catch up on previous podcasts, they are located at www.fireapparatusmagazine.com/podcast. You'll find them all there. We're also available on a variety of platforms. It's a pretty good bet that we're on your platform of choice for listening to podcasts. So make sure you check for us there.
With our fancy new logo, by the way, don't forget that.
Yes. It's almost new everywhere. There might be a couple spots where we still have to update it that we missed, but yeah, we're excited about that. It was time to freshen things up a little bit. and so we're excited about the new look as well. So again, this has been Chris McClune with Fire Apparatus and Emergency Equipment. My guest today was Ricky Riley. Have a good one and stay safe. And thanks again, Ricky.
Thanks, Chris.
This podcast is brought to you by the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. Their mission is to honor America's fallen fire heroes, support their families, colleagues, and organizations, and work to reduce preventable firefighter death and injury. Learn more at firehero.org.